General Kosuke fell onto the snow, an enemy lanced through his chest. He died with his homeland's name on his lips, and burning hatred, darkness swallowed him. Then a soft golden light pulled him away from the icy field. His eyes opened to silk and gold, a royal bedchamber, reeking of wealth, not war.
Unscarred, small. This is a boy's body.
Good morning, Crown Prince Yamato.
Crown Prince of the enemy. Then my death wasn't the end.
He raised a hand, soft, pale, free of callus. The soldier's hands were gone. On the wall, the imperial crest, the symbol of the nation that slaughtered his men.
A slow smile. This nation took my old life. Now I wear its crown like a knife.
On the battlefield, Kosuke's body was still, but his hatred had already been reborn inside the enemy's heart. The following weeks, Yamato absorbed the enemy's language and customs. Every lesson a weapon sharpened behind polite eyes.
Your Highness, your bow must be deeper for the king.
Like a leash. I'll wear it until I can snap it.
When the king summoned him, Yamato entered the throne room with a soldier's stride, hidden beneath a prince's grace.
My son, you've grown sharper every day. I see a fire in your eyes that reminds me of my younger self.
I only wish to serve the realm, Father. Father. The word tastes like ash, but his smile, why does it make my chest ache?
He watched the war council from a gallery, memorizing every strategy, every general's weakness, and the king's weariness.
Perfect, Prince. That's the mask I need. Let them trust me, love me. Then I'll pull the strings.
He bowed deeply before the king, the perfect image of a devoted son. The blade was hidden, the war within, only beginning. Weeks later, Yamato was a fixture at the war council, a silent shadow absorbing every word, every weakness.
Join me for dinner tonight, my son. I've watched you study so diligently. I'd like to know your thoughts. You remind me of my firstborn. He fell in the border wars. I still hear his laugh in this empty hall.
His grief is real. The enemy king. He's a broken father. Can I hate him so easily?
This war has taken too much from me. Sometimes I wonder if victory will ever be worth the cost.
He's tired of war. Maybe I don't need to burn the kingdom. I can just smother it.
That night, Yamato walked the palace gardens alone, the cold stars watching his divided heart.
Revenge doesn't have to be a fire. It can be a slow leak. Drain the war, not the people.
By dawn, his path was set. He would undermine the war machine from within, starving it of victory. The perfect prince smiled at the council table. The sabotage would be invisible and devastating. In the flickering candlelight of his study, Crown Prince Yamato altered the supply route for the Eastern Front, a small detour that led straight into a waiting ambush.
3 supply convoys vanished in the Valsk Pass. Someone fed those routes to the enemy.
They rage like bulls, blind to the needle in their veins.
The council blamed a junior logistics officer, but the leak's true source remained hidden.
One supply route starved. Next, I'll bleed the promotions.
He drafted a king's decree recommending the withdrawal of a promotion for the most aggressive general.
Postponing General Draven's advancement. The king wouldn't cripple his own army.
But the king, convinced by Yamato's economic arguments, upheld the decree. Voss's frustration boiled.
There's a ghost in this court. I'll find the traitor and tear out their throat.
The war machine hiccuped, but the saboteurs sat untouched at the council table. General Voss tore through the officer corps, interrogating every logistics clerk. His paranoia was a blade without a sheath.
Lieutenant Kale, you were at that route desk. Confess your treason or face the gallows.
Yamato watched from the gallery, his own work twisting an innocent into a noose. The guilt burned like old scar tissue.
I did this, an innocent stranger, and I almost let him hang.
That night, he crept into the provost's office, planting forged orders that pinned the leak on a dead enemy operative. When the evidence was discovered the next morning, Lieutenant Kale was released. Voss stormed out, unconvinced.
A convenient corpse. The real spy is still breathing, seated somewhere in this palace.
He'll never stop. I traded one guilt for another.
At court, Lady Sarah watched Yamato's strange smiles. She spoke little, but her eyes knew too much. From a high balcony, the king observed the council's chaos. But his gaze rested longest on his son. At a lavish court ball, Lady Sarah glided through the crowd, her dark eyes finding Yamato with unnerving precision.
Crown Prince Yamato, you smile so perfectly. I almost believe it. Tell me what secret keeps you awake at night.
She's testing. One wrong word and she'll dig deeper. My only secret, Lady Sarah, is that I practice my smiles in the mirror to impress beautiful nobles.
Beautiful words, but your eyes carry a winter I've only seen in old soldiers.
Old soldiers. She's too sharp. I need to control this conversation.
They danced a courtly waltz, her lips near his ear. What she murmured was not a flirtation.
Be careful, Your Highness. The shadows in this palace are hungrier than they seem.
Is she warning me or threatening me?
He smiled and bowed, but as the music swelled, Lady Sarah watched him like a hawk eyeing a mouse. The next evening, the king summoned Yamato to a private study. The fire crackled low, and the old man's eyes were distant.
I have not been honest with you, my son. This war was born from my own grief. Your elder brother, my firstborn, was cut down in a border raid. I let vengeance drive my armies for a decade.
He started this war because they killed his son. That is exactly why I wanted revenge.
Now I see the cost. Thousands of fathers and sons, dead on both sides. For what? For my wounded pride.
His hand trembled on the goblet. For the first time, Yamato saw not an enemy king, but a broken old man.
I cannot hate him. He has already been destroyed by the same cycle I wanted to continue.
I have tried to end this war, but the Hawks, like Voss, would call it treason. They cannot let go.
Yamato's throat tightened. He had been sabotaging the very man who longed for peace.
What have I been doing? I need to reconsider everything I thought about revenge.
Yamato drafted a decree redirecting military funds to borderland irrigation and granaries.
A humanitarian project. I approve, my son. Let the councils grumble.
The war council erupted. General Voss rose with a crimson face and slammed the table.
You are bleeding our army dry. These peasant fields won't stop enemy swords.
But the king raised his hand, silencing the chamber. His voice was iron.
Enough. The prince's decree stands. A starving soldier is a weak soldier.
In the border villages, grain sacks arrived. Families who had known only rationing wept with relief.
They love me. But if my sabotage is exposed, it will destroy the king who trusted me.
In the shadows, Voss watched the peasants cheer. He began drafting a list of all who profited, including the crown. The war machine sputtered, but the saboteur's mask was now bound to the throne itself. General Voss circulated a forged intelligence report among the inner circle, a false enemy offensive that required an immediate route change. His trap, the new supply path, would be watched. Any leak would point directly to whoever handled the order. Yamato received the order through a servant. As he held the quill to endorse the change, a prickle ran up his neck.
Too convenient. An emergency route change right after Voss accused a spy. He's baiting me.
He signed the order, but then ordered a discretionary delay, enough to see who would spring from the shadows. Voss's own informant moved too early. By the time the supposed leak reached the front, the trap's jaws closed on empty air.
No one leaked it. Impossible. The spy read my move.
He's hunting me personally now. I have to end the war effort before he catches my scent.
Voss began watching all council members. His paranoia was now a wolf at the door. The cat and mouse had just begun. The next misstep would not end in a warning. That night, the king summoned Yamato to a chamber deep in the palace, far from prying ears.
I know Yamato. I've always known.
He knows? How could he have known?
You died as a general on the snowfield, and you woke in my son's body.
The king's voice was calm, as if he had rehearsed this for years.
I am not your enemy. I am a soldier too, from a nation that no longer exists.
A third kingdom, crushed by both warring sides centuries ago. He had watched his homeland burn.
I was reborn here to wait. For you. For a reincarnated enemy who could understand.
This can't be true. My whole mission was a shadow of his plan.
In that dim room, the enemy prince realized he had never been the hunter. He was the awaited ally. The king's voice dropped to a murmur, confessing years of hidden moves that had slowed the war just enough.
I thought I was alone. But when you were born, I saw your eyes. A soldier's eyes. I knew.
He's been doing the same thing. We were both saboteurs, blind to each other. Blind to each other.
Together, we can do more. Not destroy, but end this cycle. Finally.
The offer hung in the air, heavier than any sword he had ever lifted.
Can I trust him? Can I trust myself to let go of the hate that's kept me alive? What if the war machine crushes us first? Voss is already scenting blood.
Then we'll face him together. But first, I need your word. Will you walk this path with me?
Yamato hesitated. Then, slowly, he extended his hand. The pact was forged in the candlelight. The enemy-crowned prince and the enemy king were now not enemies, but two old soldiers seeking a way out of the dark. In the following days, they sketched a bold plan. A fake peace overture that would brand the war faction as enemies of hope.
I will leak a false negotiation to the Western Front. When Voss objects, the people will see only his bloodlust.
If we pull this off, the war faction collapses. But it must be flawless. Any mistake, and we're both dead.
But Voss's spies had already crept through the palace walls. Reports of the king's secret meetings reached him by dawn.
The old fool and his puppet are plotting behind closed doors. I knew the leak came from above.
He connected every thread. The delayed promotions, the vanished supplies, the prince's sudden rise. The web was complete.
They are the traitors. Both of them. I'll drag this council down on their heads before they can speak peace.
He began compiling a fatal dossier, stitching every anomalous order with the royal signatures. Treason was now a documented fact. An emergency council was summoned. Voss was ready to strike at the very heart of the throne.
He's moving faster than we feared. Our plan may not be ready, but retreat is no longer an option.
The War Council chamber fell deathly quiet as General Voss strode forward, a thick dossier clutched in his hand.
Behold, the traitors, Prince Yamato and the king himself have bled our army dry.
If the king falls, peace dies. I must shield him. Stop. The king knew nothing. Every traitorous order, I drafted them alone.
You, alone, a child's lie to shield his father.
But Yamato produced a sealed confession, written hours before.
Every act of sabotage was mine. The king is innocent.
The council read in stunned silence. Then Voss roared for the guards. Yamato offered no resistance as the shackles closed, his eyes pleading with the king. The king sat stone-faced, but beneath the table, his hands shook. The peace plan now hung by a thread. Deep in the night, a cloaked figure slipped past the dozing guards and reached the prince's cell.
My son. I should be the one in chains. I planned to take the blame.
He came. He risked his throne to see me. No, father. This is our chance. At the tribunal, I will speak the truth that no one can deny.
Reincarnation. They'll call it madness, a traitor's last lie.
They cannot ignore the battle layout at Varn Hill, the troop count, the casualties from the day I died. Facts only a ghost from the other side could recite.
The king's weathered face softened with a painful hope he had not felt in decades.
Then we end this cycle together. My old soul and yours. Let them witness.
2 soldiers, Born in enemy nations, now father and son sealed their pact with a shared breath.
When I stand before them, promise me you'll be there, not as judge, but as the ally who waited a century.
The day of the tribunal arrived. The hall was packed with nobles, officers, and commoners who had come to witness the fall of the crown prince.
Behold the traitor. He admits his guilt. His life is forfeit, and the law demands his head.
This is the moment. My old life and this new body, they will finally speak as one. I do not deny my acts of sabotage, but before you cast judgment, hear a truth that no spy or traitor could ever know.
The court stirred. Lady Sarah's lips parted in the crowd. The king gripped his throne.
I am not merely Crown Prince Yamato. I am General Kosuke, killed 4 years ago on the Varn Hill battlefield by this nation's spear.
Madness. A desperate lie to escape the gallows.
Let me recite the exact layout of Varn Hill that day. The names of the officers, the number of my fallen men. Facts no one in this nation has ever recorded.
A chill spread through the hall. The judges exchanged glances. The king sat forward, his mask cracking, all eyes fixed on the shackled prince. The impossible proof was about to be given, and the old world hung on his next words.
The Varn Hill Pass is flanked by 2 ridges. On that morning, fog covered the eastern approach. I positioned 3 companies of infantry there.
He named the officers, their commands, even the names of the fallen, a casualty list that no spy could have crafted.
412 of my soldiers died in that valley. I watched them fall, one by one.
The scribes checked the kingdom's records. None of these details existed, yet the prince spoke them like a man who had lived them.
This is a trick. Some enemy informant fed him this.
But the eldest judge, a man who had witnessed that war, raised his trembling hand. He remembered the silence of the border after Varn Hill. The numbers matched.
The truth is a blade sharper than any sword. It cuts through lies because it carries weight no fiction can bear.
A heavy silence fell. Even Voss's bluster died in his throat. The court was no longer a trial, it was a reckoning.
This changes everything.
The impossible had been spoken aloud, and no voice could unhear it. The reincarnated soldier stood in chains, but the court was now his prisoner. Then the king rose. All noise ceased. Aldrich descended from the high throne, each step a hammer blow on the silence.
I, too, am a reincarnated soldier. Not from your homeland, General Kosuke. From a nation that no longer exists on any map. 3 centuries ago, the armies of both your warring kingdoms crushed my homeland between them. I died in those flames, and I was reborn. I waited centuries for an enemy soldier to appear inside my own bloodline, for someone who could understand, and finally break the wheel.
A single tear cut through the weathered lines of his face. The king was not a monarch in that moment. He was a man who had lost everything.
This war must end, not with another victory, but with an agreement forged by 2 old soldiers who have already died once for nothing.
This is treason. You would lay down arms while the enemy still masses at our border.
But Yamato looked at the king, and he saw not an enemy, but a comrade. 2 soldiers who had crossed lifetimes to stand on the same side. The court erupted in chaos, shouts of treason and calls for unity clashing. But the king's authority, built over a lifetime, held the room.
Let the scribes prepare the peace accord. My son and I will sign it, and the war will end by year's end.
Guards, seize the false king. He would trade our victory for a ghost's lie. I command you in the name of the War Council.
Enough. The only traitor here is you, General Voss. Guards, arrest him for sedition against the crown.
The royal guards hesitated a breath, then seized the general, dragging him from the hall. His curses faded into a stunned silence. The scribes brought the peace accord. With trembling hands, King Aldrich dipped the quill and signed his name.
This ink is heavier than any sword ever lifted. It binds 2 nations together, not apart.
By the authority of the crown, I declare an immediate ceasefire. Let messengers ride to every front. The war is over.
In the gallery, Lady Sarah's sharp eyes softened. Even she, the hawk, had not foreseen this dawn of peace. Hooves thundered from the palace gates. The word of peace spread through the capital like a storm wind. Inside the tribunal, nobles who had clamored for war fell silent. Some wept, others stared in disbelief. On the highest balcony, king and crown prince stood together, watching a new world begin under the rising sun. Before the gathered thousands, Yamato raised the ceremonial sword that marked his military rank and snapped it across his knee.
I renounce all military authority. Let no soldier ever again obey my command in war. I will serve peace, not slaughter.
The shattered steel rang on the stone. It was the sound of a war ending, not with a treaty alone, but with a man who refused to lead another charge. At every front, the ceasefire order arrived. Soldiers who had faced each other for years stacked their weapons and walked away. At Varn Hill Bridge, prisoners crossed the border for the first time. Enemies clasped hands where once they had swung bayonets. In the first week, families torn apart for years fell into each other's arms. A continent began to exhale. Yamato stood a little apart, watching former enemies embrace. The cold smirk he once wore had softened into something he did not yet have a name for.
This is what I died for. Not revenge, redemption.
The king joined him, placing a weathered hand on his shoulder. Two reborn soldiers, now guardians of a fragile peace. The war was over. But for these two men who had already given one life each, the true rebuilding was only just beginning. A year passed. In the borderlands, Yamato walked among fields of wheat taller than a man, his hands calloused now from the plow, not the sword.
These are the hands of a farmer. They feed more soldiers than my old ones ever killed.
King Aldrich, thinner and grayer, sat in his garden, watching the sun set over a land at peace. His smile was thin but real. The agricultural funds had turned war-torn earth into bread baskets. Children grew up without hearing cannons. A monument was raised at Varn Hill, not to victory, but to the vanished dead of 3 nations, with no flags, only names. Yamato knelt by a still pond and saw his reflection, a young prince with an old soldier's eyes, but no longer frozen with hate.
Kosuke's ghost is quiet now. He rests, and so do I.
The king's hand found his shoulder again. No words passed, but the 2 old souls recognized the peace they had built. The nations healed slowly, like scarred skin. But they healed, and that was enough. In the crimson twilight, the reincarnated prince stood beside his father. Both men who had died to understand what living truly meant. That night, Yamato dreamed for the first time without screams. A white void opened around him, silent, warm, and waiting. A figure emerged from the light. General Kosuke, in worn armor, but with a face at peace.
You are me, but free now.
Kosuke did not speak. He simply smiled, the smile of a soldier who had finally laid down his burden. He reached out and touched Yamato's chest, not a wound, but a seal, a quiet permission to let go. Then, like melting frost, the old general faded. The white void grew warm, and the hate that had kept them both alive dissolved.
So this is what it feels like to be whole.
He woke to the first gray light of dawn. No cold smirk, no clenched fists, only a quiet breath.
I am not Kosuke. I am not merely Yamato. I am the peace they both earned.
Outside the window, the sun rose on a world that had finally learned to stop killing. And in that quiet room, a warrior truly rested. They climbed the last green slope, father and son. The sky blushed with a dawn that would not turn back. At the summit, they stopped. No words were needed. The silence spoke of everything they had broken together. Before them, the lands of 2 nations stretched, stitched together by the gray ribbon of new roads and the green of new fields. King Aldrich placed his wrinkled hand on Yamato's shoulder, a weight that spoke more than any decree.
We did it, old soldier. Not revenge, rebirth.
The sun lifted fully above the horizon, pouring gold across the silent land. The cycle of war was truly broken. Below, the world began to wake. Farmers, soldiers, children, all under a sky that no longer knew cannon smoke. The two reincarnated soldiers stood motionless, guardians of a fragile peace they had carved from the stone of hatred. Then, as the light grew brighter, the image slowly faded, not an ending, but a quiet permission to hope. The enemy prince brought peace.